I'm Brian. I'm the reserve manager here at the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust in Llanelli, and we're currently sat on an island in the main lake on the nature reserve. And for the last couple of years, we've had some sheep join us on the island. It's an area that we've seen, unfortunately, declines in some of our breeding birds, in particular wading birds called lapwings, and it's a nationwide decline that, to the extent that now this is one of only 2 places in Carmarthenshire where lapwing breed, and so we've been doing some work to try and reverse that decline. And in 2015 we did a lot of scrub clearance on this island where we're sitting here. We've got the remains of the stumps of the trees and a lot of the scrub around us. But to be able to manage this island in the long term, then stop it just reverting straight back to scrub, we needed to think about ways that we could manage it sustainably. And the obvious solution was animals. Now, because it's an island, we couldn't get cattle or ponies out here. We only had a little rowing boat, so the obvious choice was to look for some sheep that would be willing to eat well, anything other than fresh green grass, which is the one thing we don't have much of out here. So we use grazing animals around the nature reserve here and have done for many years. We have cattle in some of our marshy grassland and on the salt marsh, and ponies in some other pasture land. But finding a grazier who would be willing to put animals in this kind of habitat, in this less conventional grazing habitat, was going to be a bit of a challenge. Fortunately, through our local nature partnership, I found out about PONT, an organisation which helps to promote conservation grazing, and Emma Douglas at PONT quickly got on board and started to help us in a number of different ways, most importantly to find a grazier for the island. But also that autumn she came and trained us in how to check sheep for health and also our other stock as well, so that we could then take on the role of checking the animals when they were here, and make it more attractive for a grazier so that they could be a bit less hands-on on a day-to-day basis. So we were trained up, and then with Emma's help we found someone crazy enough to put their animals out on this island.
I'm Jane Bissett. I'm a shepherd and I live in the Vale of Glamorgan. For many years I did harbour a secret envy of the flying flock of Shetland sheep that go away doing conservation grazing, but of course where we live there's no real opportunities. So when I was approached by Emma at a show, in a show environment, to see if I would be interested, I secretly tried to be quite cool about it, but I jumped at the chance, and lured by the opportunity of sheep being able to travel to an island by a boat, who could refuse? So I came over and had a look. It's been a wonderful project. It's lovely to see Shetland sheep being able to graze in what would be their natural habitat. It's lovely to have them in lowland conditions, but to see them doing the job that they've sort of been bred for, really, real back to nature type of thing, is really rewarding. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience, knowing that the sheep have come to a good, safe environment. The people that are here have taken me on board very much as one of the team. I've taken them on board very much as one of the team, and I rely on them an awful lot to do their job as stock checkers, which gives me the confidence of knowing when the sheep are here, even though I come to check them as often as I can. That is literally every 6-8 weeks. While they are here, that I know I'm only a phone call away, but more importantly they know that I'm only a phone call away. They've bonded with the sheep, they've made the project successful, they've had nature successes, and yeah, I'd recommend it to anybody. I've really enjoyed the experience, and I was delighted when it didn't end after the first year, and we're back again with more successes and different sheep, and they've settled in as quickly as the first flock. So we're hoping now that we're going to develop them with a nucleus of weathered Shetlands that will remain here for most of the year, and they will be joined by younger weathers, and then as it progresses, the older ones will leave the island, and we'll have hopefully a nice turnaround of sheep. When we first brought the sheep in April, it was a bit of an adventure for all of us. They were brought over to the island by boat, one at a time, which was a challenge to say the least. But when they arrived, they were lambs, and we had no expectation of how we thought the year was going to pan out, or indeed the first 6 months. So by the time we collected them, I was quite surprised when we got them home to see them having developed so successfully, looking so well. They were very, very fit, and they'd grown immensely, which is what I would have expected from lambs towards growing into shearlings. What I didn't expect was what happened next. They came into our normal health programme when I got them home, which was to check them for a worm burden, see if there's any potential worm burden, and to weigh them, which is what we do the rest of the flock. Well, I put the first one on the scales and swung it free. And then I swung it free again, because I quite didn't believe what was in front of me. They'd gained an enormous amount of weight. The majority of them were heavier than their peer group that were at home. They were phenomenally well, and when we sent away the fetal egg count, it came back with a ridiculously low score. So for the whole of their lambhood, they hadn't had any worming at all. They weren't carrying any significant worm burden, and they really were a picture of health. So because we had a peer group at home from the same ram, we decided it was a perfect opportunity for a little bit of a trial. So all the sheep were blood sampled, and that was cross-referenced, and the sheep that had been away on the conservation ground were higher in trace minerals than the ones at home, which was not something that we expected, and it was clearly a benefit. All information is good information, and I guess that I thought I was probably going to say that the experience has been brilliant. We thoroughly enjoyed it. There was nothing detrimental, but I certainly didn't expect it to be the success that it was. So when Brian invited us to come back the following year to do a follow-up, I just couldn't have been more pleased.
Grazing animals are an essential part of the wetland ecosystem, really. They would have been here long before we were, and without them we've got a situation where managing habitat like this is incredibly demanding on manpower in terms of the staff or volunteers, also fossil fuels and everything that we need to use to maintain this kind of vegetation by hand. And then even with that, we don't do it as well as animals do. Animals graze down certain areas very low, other areas will leave tussocky, whereas cutting it ourselves you tend to end up with a bit of a level habitat. And what the lapwing need is that combination of very short grazed grassland, tussocky areas that the chicks can hide in, and it's already proven a real success for us here. So 3 years ago, before we started working on the island, we were down to one pair of lapwings, sadly, on a separate little island, and no chicks for many years. 8 years in a row we'd had no chicks fledging. The year after we increased to 3 pairs and had our first 2 chicks fledge, and then this year, on the second year of grazing, we've increased from 3 pairs of lapwings up to 12 pairs, and we know that at least 9 of those fledged chicks. So it's incredible the curve we're on, and hopefully that's going to continue over the next few years. So yeah, I'm strongly hoping the sheep will be back next year.
It's thanks to PONT that I've been given this great opportunity to not only be a shepherd at home, but to be a shepherd away. I've really enjoyed being the owner of a conservation flock, and I'm really looking forward to it continuing for the years ahead, which I'm sure it will, because we've all forged a great bond with the sheep, a good relationship with the conservation work that the sheep are doing. Primitive sheep are perfect for this type of thing. I was pleased when I was approached by PONT. It was something I've always wanted to do. And I think really the icing on the cake for me was when I was asked to do a brief presentation at the annual conference, where I was able to meet other graziers, find out different experiences from different people carrying on all the great work that PONT has started continues to do and has encouraged us all to do for the future. I think it's a great organisation. Without them, this conservation work wouldn't happen. Without them, our landscape wouldn't be what it is today. So I think with that in the future, we can only hope to improve on everything and look forward to the successes that we're going to have. I'm sure there's going to be many of them.
As well as the benefits to the wildlife, we feel like the project has had benefits for us as well. I mean, not only have I had less brush cutting to do on this island, but my staff and volunteers have really enjoyed the experience of checking the stock and helping to look after the sheep. You know, it's not been part of our role really to have that interaction with livestock before, and we've really enjoyed that and learned a lot from it as well. And one thing I've heard many times is our visitors talking about the sheep and loving, you know, having these animals to look at from the hides and from the screens around the place. They often think they're goats, but they love seeing the primitive breed, and they look so natural in the landscape, and it's definitely been interesting for them as well.
There's one thing that the project's taught me. It's the importance of conservation. It can be educational. We've been able to take it out to schools when we've done visits back at home, pass the message on and everything. I would absolutely recommend other people that have got any type of livestock that's suitable for conservation grazing, don't dismiss it out of hand. Go along, have a look. Even if you don't think it's suitable initially, which I don't think initially I did, but I wanted to really give it a go. Best decision I ever made. And if there is one thing that PONT's taught me, that's grazing really is amazing.